uses you can use them for, but these are your 4 primary ones. So, hydraulic pry tools, I wish he was in here. What do you call that tool a little bit ago?
Rabbit tool.
The rabbit tool, yeah. No. What, I've seen them, I mean, have you ever used one?
Trainings.
Trainings. You guys describe how they work.
So it's an L-shaped or duckbill type deal, right?
Is that,
So, like, the
is that
duck,
what it's,
Jerry probably used one, haven't you? One of those, the rabbit tool?
Yeah,
They're more older version, I mean,
like a 40 power.
yeah, so
Yeah,
basically
oh,
it
yeah.
looks like this, right? So what you do, and then it's, some of them are staggered, you got 2 pieces of metal, right? One's like this, and then you have another piece of metal that goes up, and then it's like that. So what you do, you take this, and it's basically 2 pieces of metal like this, right? Then what you do, you have the door that opens up. So you take this piece right here, you stick it right here, and you take a hammer and just beat it in, right? And then you have this pump, these 2 pieces of metal, spread it. Is what you're doing, you're just spreading the door jamb open, basically what that is.
so kind of basically a hydraulic door opener.
Yeah,
You-
basically.
Yeah.
You remember the old RS-10
Yep.
kits?
Yep.
Yeah, we still got one of those.
So,
Had the
We-
small wedge and then you had the big duck bill, or about that long.
we have one here, but I'm sure it's walked off.
It may be on the SWAT vehicle, might be the one they have now.
But yeah, you just beat them in, and then you just take your hydraulic pump and it just press the door jamb, basically what it does. It's kind of a neat tool, I mean, you just don't see them around here.
Then you've got your hydraulic rams, so we've got those in the county, we've got them here. Basically gonna be the same ram you use for your extrication, vehicle extrication. What's one problem you would see with trying to get that into a house to force a door on the outside of a house?
My hoses aren't that long.
Hoses aren't that long. You gotta have the access to a battery powered ram, or, it's a lot of strain to carry a hydraulic ram and a pump and hoses to a front door to use something you can use that, your force majeure tools for, so. I can't say I've ever seen anybody use a hydraulic ram to open a door, but it's an option.
It's more in your metal construction, heavy metal,
Maybe like your Walmart construction.
yeah, where it's
Commercial.
solid beam type metal versus your normal.
And maybe you're not forcing a door, maybe you're
You're
forcing a
trying
sill or
to pry the jam the doorway open.
Yeah.
What you're doing with that. Because it's like that heavier metal, not like this junk metal beams they have now in construction, right? The little, what do they call
metal
it?
studs.
Metal studs, right?
I think that's what this is all built out of.
Yeah, I'm talking like Ortec type
Yeah.
heavy metal beams where they put a door in where you have to, heavy metal door, right?
Or it doesn't have any give.
Where that you can beat on it all day and not really do much.
Yeah.
Because, so that's what they're using it for.
So manual prying tools, I think we hit every one of these except for 3 of them, 4 of them. So we hit the crowbar, the pry axe. Has anybody ever seen a pry axe? So we'll go back here in a little bit. We've got several of those out in the county, I think 3 or 4. The Kelly tool, it's basically similar to how, again, you have one less option. I guess those aren't forks. But basically another prying device. Got your flat blower. Those are pretty common on like construction trim and whatnot. The Hux bar, I've seen pictures of one. I've never seen one in person. The claw tool looks like something that might be a little homemade. And Halligan and a pry bar. Looks like, I mean, they're all obviously prying devices. You got different mechanical advantages, angle just different forces there, so. Like I said, the real common ones are private, or that we've got, are the crowbar, pry bar, Halligan, New York hook, there's a lot of specialty ones in here. Some of these they probably don't even make anymore. A lot of the people nowadays are trying to make the next greatest Halligan, so there's all kinds of options out there as far as designs and whatnot. I tried one time. It was a Halligan design, but it had basically a button you can make it longer. So you got your purchase point, and then you hit this button, and you slid it out, and it just gave you more mechanical advantage. But there's a lot of you couldn't strike it with it extended. There's a lot of like downfalls to it, but like I said, everybody's trying to make it better Halligan.
How long's the Halligan tool been out there?
You
This is
know?
a good question for you, instructor.
I looked it up and I was gonna put it in the slide, but I put something else in here instead, and I don't know off the top of my head.
It's the only tool that's been here longer than I have.
So who designed it, and how long has it been in the fire service?
His name was Halligan.
Hugh Halligan is the
The
creator
name
of
is
it.
easy, I just don't know how long it's been in the fire service.
1940s.
40s, the exact date. So, been around a while. I thought it was older than that.
So
What size of Halligan tool do you guys
So-
use? At 36?
No, a lot of times, so that's a pretty good question. They make them in various sizes. I think we've got I think there's a 28 out there. These are all 32s, and we've got a 36 somewhere.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem we pose with the 36 is, so we'll even go over it out there in the classroom area. But what's a real common doorway width? Anybody know? 36, if you're lucky.
there's 32.
So a lot of residential stuff are 32. So these are actually just a little under 32. I believe this is a 36-inch commercial door. But if you get a 36-inch bar in there, what's the problem you see when you go to?
You're not gonna be able to put all that.
So if you have a 36-inch bar, you're gonna stop essentially there. That's the reason we don't have a 36 inches. 36ers here.
Besides that, they're heavy.
And they're heavy. This bar here is extremely heavy. This isn't a PowerPoint, so this will be pretty cool to talk about. So this is what they call a 3-piece Halligan. It's actually got little pins in here that hold each head on. A lot of the guys cuss these. I've seen them in videos break. I've never seen them before break. I don't think we use them enough to tell if they're gonna break, but they are quite a bit heavier than like a 1-piece forged Halligan, which is what we'll be using out there. We can use them both. Let you guys feel the different weights and kind of see the differences in the two. I'll get that little one out too. It's a little sawed-off thing. I mean, it's like I said, it's only about that long. That's only about that tall. It's kind of like a kid version of a Halligan. But I mean, I bet it has its place. You know, that's probably good for some doorways in a trailer house. So a lot of trailer house hallways are pretty narrow. I mean, shoulder to shoulder. So here, I added this one, your Halligan anatomy. So we've got 3 basically tools on your Halligan, and we're gonna hold it just like the PowerPoint, so it's not confusing. So we've got your adds. I think everything we've got are pretty marked. Basically your adds, or which I'd have to go over the mechanical advantages. But so the set lines are what we've engraved into these tools. And basically when you go to drive your tool to get your purchase point, this is a pretty universal depth on how deep you need to be to get past. A lot of these doors have a little piece of wood trim kind of to seal a gap here. So we put these lines on all the tools to let you know you're in there far enough to actually begin to pry before you just pop off the wood trim. So you got your adds, you got your pike, which is can be used for multiple things. I mean, you can strike it into wood, you can sink it into a wall to step on. There's a lot of various uses of it. Then you got your forks. So like the forks are marked on all of the ones on the primary trucks for sure. But Jason wasn't a primary truck, so they got marked. I think Tyler Street with their marked everything one year. But that's another good tool, or another reference. You wanna kinda make sure you're within, or to that line, if not just a little past, to make sure you've got a good, bite on the object you're prying against. So. What's this piece?
Okay.
This piece and this piece.
Forks.
Forks, okay. So, when we go out there, we'll be using that terminology to, I'll say, use your adze, use your fork, or use your pike. Kind of some things I wanted you to know before we get out there. So, this PowerPoint, this is the actual, Probar website's diagram. I kinda drew some lines on it, and, but yeah, it's this is where we got our measurements to put on these. And, went off of- they call them tuned, whenever you go through and put your lines in, you can kinda clean up your edges. So then you get your striking tools. There's, like I said, about anything you can swing in the fire service is a striking tool technically. So you got your sledgehammer, maul, mallet, hammer, battering ram. How many of those have you seen on fire trucks? None. I think the SWAT has one big heavy one. A punch. How many people carry a punch in their gear? So we can not only use those on fire, or on car wrecks, we can use them on fire scenes. And if you have to bust out window, that's your only option. Throw a punch back, and you're there. Chisel, it can be used, kinda hard to keep track of, but I've never used one. That's not to say they don't have their place. Flathead axe and your pick. So, when, actually, I was gonna go this before this slide, but, so, when we have these two here together, or not together, alone, you've got a flathead axe and a Halligan. And you marry the two together, now you have irons. So, I know part of the Kirksville seating guidelines is that Tyler is to grab the irons every time we have a fire alarm or fire. You hear them called the irons, the married pair, just kind of some terminology used in the fire service, but those two tools work great married together. That's why I call them the married pair. Take them every fire you go to, and take them and set them at the front door. You know you've got a striking tool and a prying tool at a minimum. So, this kind of goes over some mechanical advantage. We'll touch base on this out there. It's a lot easier to show in person than it is to show in this picture. Basically, a good rule of thumb is anytime you're using the tool, keep the tool between you and the object. Try not to ever get in between the tool and the door frame, whichever one you're prying on. Fulcrum, that's a good word to use too. The door frame is gonna be, if you're gonna be opening a door, you wanna make sure you're using something solid to be pushing against to get that door open. You don't wanna pry just against the door, cause it could, it's gonna bounce back and whatnot. So you wanna have a good solid fulcrum. Pushing and pulling tools. How many people have pulled ceiling? I know Jacob got to witness it the other day. So we're not gonna necessarily use the pike poles for forcible entry, but they have their place. Just, they're really not a prying tool, so they're more of like an overhaul setting or reaching to get something kind of deal. Drywall hook, probably not gonna use to force a door. The New York hook, what they call a rubbish hook, but that can be used for forcible entry. The biggest limitation is it's 6 foot tall, so I mean you're pretty limited on where you can get it, but it does supply a great amount of mechanical advantage. those to pry it with. Hey, what, so, based on what we've talked on so far, kinda, can somebody tell me, or everybody pitch in some common force splinter tools we've talked about?
Howling.
Yeah, we'll do five, first five, and we can go on.
Redhead axe.
Right head, or flat head, yeah, sorry,
Bolt cutters.
force entry that way, yep,
H12.
A12,
Sawzall.
Sawzall, love it. Are there considerations for forcible entry or for, compromised safety? When I say this, are you always gonna be in the safest environment when you're trying to get that door open? I mean, you may have some fire coming up to your butt, so I mean, your goal is you're trying to get that door open to get away from the fire or get into a safer environment, so some considerations are, or you need to take safety as a consideration, but it's not always gonna be in your favor. Chances are you're forcing that door to get in an unsafe environment, so you just kinda take on the hazard as your job. Anything in the fire service, sprains, strains, fractures, trips, falls, abrasions, lacerations, there's gonna be your real common injuries. I tripped and fell the other day, I guess I didn't strain anything, but trips are, I mean, you lay your tool on the ground, you got a tripping hazard no matter what. What's something that's, I guess you guys don't know what I'm real picky about, but what's something everybody should be real picky about at a fire scene when you're working like back behind a house? Any special considerations, you know, you go to the backside of a house, what's normally not back there when you're outside in the middle of the night? Light is your friend. I mean, we can go out in the apparatus bay and turn the lights off, and you guys can practice forcing that door with no light on, and see what you like it. So get familiar with where the lights are out on the trucks. Everybody should have an issued light to go on their gear. Helmet lights, I highly encourage buying a helmet light, because that little light right there when you're working, it's kinda in your way. Where's your helmet lights? Right there. If you guys have any like questions as far as what helmet lights to buy, I've tried just about every one of them out there and can kinda give you some pluses and minuses on them, but have lights. That's where you get hurt, is when you're trying to do this in an unsafe environment. I mean, that can be considered unsafe, improper lighting. We've got Milwaukee lights on majority of the trucks, so set the Milwaukee light up behind you, bring it with you. If you're going to the backside of a house that you've never been to, always bring a light. Some easy things to do to prevent injuries. Can anybody think of a real common injury that would just, anytime you're using a prying tool, that you're probably gonna stumble across every now and then, that everybody hates doing, and it's gonna say bad words when it happens?
Smashing a finger.
Oh yes, that happens all the time. It's just part of it. Your finger's gonna be purple for a week or two. So if you don't use PPE, you might end up losing that fingertip, whereas if you had a glove on, you might just end up smashing it. So gloves are a must anytime you're using striking tools, forcing tools. Obviously, whenever you're cutting something sharp, you don't want your hand down here, you're gonna cut your hand. If we have any damaged tools, they shouldn't be on the trucks, but if you note that it's damaged, set it aside and let somebody know, hey, don't use this thing, it's broke. So you go to use a damaged tool, you're gonna end up probably having more of a problem than you started with. Selecting the right tool, it's a big thing. Don't show up to a gunfight with a knife, so pick your tools. Like I said, we talked about the pike pole earlier. Are you gonna use that to pry a door open? Probably not. So use the right tools and position yourself so your weight is balanced on both feet. That goes back in that safety chapter, or safety PowerPoint. You don't wanna be trying to pry a door on one leg and fall in and split your head on the axe. So or you got this sharp pike here, it's pretty easy to land on. Now, another thing, speaking of sharp pike, it's just kind of a fire ground safety rule. Anytime you're not using like this tool here, what's a good way to set it down?
Like,
So, pike down on the mud, the safest way if you're on the concrete, just like that. So if I go to step on it or fall, you know, there's a good chance I can fall and hit my head here versus hitting my head here.
It'd be a little damp.
And you've probably seen
For a
those
second.
1,000 ways to die, that's probably one of them. Same with this, don't set it like this, lay down flat. Any tool you think that might be a safety hazard that you see laying unsafe, reach down, flip it over and say, hey dude, set your tool, points down. Just don't be rude about it, just be courteous and let them know what's up. So these are some ways to, that's not how I worded that, but preventing injuries when using tools. Ensure you have room to operate the tool properly. It's a very good one to know. Beware of sudden release of energy when door and wall is open. So you're prying on that door, you've got 200 pounds of pure brute strength pushing on it. And what's gonna happen as soon as that breaks? You're probably gonna have 200 pounds going through that doorway if you're not positioning your feet just right and whatnot. So always make sure you have good footing and know that you got the majority of your weight pushes it that way, so you don't wanna fall in the fire. I mean, you might push that door open and fall 3 stories down that stairwell. So just kinda use that as a safety factor. Make sure nobody's on the other side of the door. I've seen it happen, you force the door, and Granny's laying right on the other side of the door, and you're trying to figure out why the door won't open. You've got 2 guys pushing on it. And Granny's arms pinched underneath the door. Be aware of your environment to prevent gas or vapor ignitions. If you don't need to use a gas saw in a house that you don't need forcible entry in, don't do it, because you're just gonna cause more work. Tool safety. Become familiar with all tools you will use. Keep tools in properly designated places. Make sure tools are secured. So every truck, well, not every truck, there's some trucks, but a lot of the trucks should have a designated spot on a tool board or on a wall in the back of the apparatus compartment. Like, we use like quick fist or like mounts. So make sure they're secured in there where they need to be and they're not just laying loosely, sliding everywhere. If you notice that one of the mounts are broke, let somebody know, we'll have it fixed. Repair, notify if you have anything damaged. You can't always replace it, but no sense of keeping it on the truck if it's not gonna work. Do not, obviously, when it says do not strike the tool's handle, if you're wanting to use this axe here, you're not gonna use the handle to hit with, you're gonna use the metal side. So try to avoid, I mean, it happens, miss swings, you overswing, you might hit the wood handle on this, break it, but it happens, but try to avoid it. And do not use a prying tool as a striking tool. It can be done. Safety with power saws. So the big thing is matching the blade with the task and material to be cut. So with that being said, does anybody kind of know, or what are some common materials we would be cutting? Like say we get out on a fire scene and we had to force entry on a house. What's some materials we'd run into on residential or commercial properties?
garage door, maybe.
So what's that made of?
Aluminum.
Garage door?
I'm a firefighter, not overhead door company.
So garage door, we've got metal, you got fiberglass, styrofoam, you get a little bit of it all. Springs, so that's, on a garage door, you hit a spring, that's like a rocket. What, you said,
I think aluminum roofing,
Yeah. 10, yep. Roof on 10, you think a wood blade's gonna do very good on 10? No, probably not. You think a wood, or a 10 blade's gonna do very good on wood. I promise you, your wood blade will do better on tin than your tin blade will do on wood. Usually you get, that, if you get that metal blade trying to cut on wood, it just kinda ends up burning it. It stinks, it makes it smell like you're starting another fire. Always wear your PPE, can't say that enough, and fully inspect the saw before and after use. How many people get the truck, or get the saw off the truck and check it over fully before they start it and jump up on a roof or start cutting on a door? So, no, not him. So we got Jared, he's why does this thing not have gas in it? I just pull on it, and then I assume it doesn't have gas in it after about 30 pulls. Like here, obviously out in the county it's a little harder to do, but here, every third day, everything should be getting started as far as gas powered equipment. Everything electric should be getting charged. People should be putting their hands on this stuff every third day. And when I say every third day, that's the beginning of our 3-day rotations, so that's kind of where that falls in. Like I said, in the county, it doesn't get done enough. I'd like it to get done monthly, but it's really hard to get volunteers to show up monthly and do that stuff. If it won't start, start with the gas. Safety with power saws. Do not use any power saw in a flammable atmosphere or near flammable liquids. Like I said, if we do, our water hose. Maintain situational awareness. So that goes back to your cut. You kind of just need to look every now and then, like, what grass am I catching on fire? Am I catching the house on fire? Do I need to be cutting here? Did the door just fall open? Can I stop cutting? That kind of all falls into situational awareness. If you don't need to be there, don't be there. Have a safety officer run around. You may be cutting, trying to get in this door, and mom's standing right behind you, trying to get in there to get her tablet out. She doesn't need to be standing there because she obviously doesn't have PPE on or eye protection. She's going to become part of the hazard because she's getting in your way, and then you got to watch for her. So if you have to, stop and say, "Step back, let me do this," and then we'll get your tablet. Or a kid. We'll get your kid. You're not going to get your kid. No. But sometimes people are hard-headed. They got the tunnel vision. They want that one thing. They're going to be yelling at you the whole time. So just try to be as courteous as you can and have somebody hold them back. Keep them out of your work area. You need to read every manual for every saw and sawzall before you use it. So follow manufacturer's guideline for operation. So that's the default. If something goes wrong and you didn't read the manual, it's your fault. That's just kind of a generic manufacturer's statement. So keep the blades and chains sharpened. Like I said, not everybody knows how to sharpen them, so if it's dull or it's not cutting, maybe we need to replace the chain or let somebody know of higher authority to have it sharpened. Be aware of hidden hazards like booby traps. So we just went over this. I think I just- What actions can a firefighter take to stay safe while performing forcible entry? Just simple actions. Let's start with the basics and work way up.
Proper PPE.
There's bingo number one.
Awareness.
It's a number, but yeah, it's one of them.
Replacement.
Foot placement, so we're dispersing our weight, trying to get, making sure we have that right footing and not putting all of our weight on the tool.
Proper size up.
Of,
On the door. 360.
so know the situation you're in, where the doors are, and do we need to be forcing here? I mean, that's the big thing. Do we need to be at this door, or do we need to go to the back door that's unlocked? Yeah. Does everybody need to take a break? Keep rolling on. talk about how to do, carry forcible entry tools. It's pretty basic, you'll catch on to this pretty quick, but, we're just gonna go over some simple ways. Yeah. Nope, just surprised we didn't get an act on the one. So this is real quick.
1004 West Gardner Street, Army Church, 1004 West Gardner Street, 13 Charlie 1, diabetic problem, 1004 West Gardner.
Alright, so let them do their thing, but on here we've got, proper carrying techniques. We should do it more often, you don't see it very often, but these are kind of some safe ways to carry these prying tools. The biggest thing to remember is to make sure you have the point facing away from you, because if you trip and fall, you don't wanna fall on that point, so maybe carrying this would be a little safer to carry it like this versus this, you know. You can carry it like this, but you can also have a chance to do this. A real safe way is sideways. The book part, or the textbook answer is gonna be carry it with the point away from you. It's gonna fall away from me. I usually carry it like this, which probably gonna get myself stabbed one day, because I wasn't doing like the other one said. These are just kind of some techniques on how to carry them. Is that a hammer, sledgehammer? Yeah. So a good thing on the power tools is the majority of the power tools have a lock on them, a safety. If you're walking across the yard, try to make sure, before you take off walking across the yard, make sure the locks on the chain, like the chainsaws will have a brake. We'll kind of show you that here in a little bit. So you wanna make sure the brake's shut or the saw's off, grinder, make sure your hand's on the trigger. Just that little bit of safety factor walking across that yard, you never know when you're gonna trip across a power line or garden hose or kid toy, and bam, you just cut your hand off because you're holding your hand on the trigger. Same thing with a gun. You don't ever walk through the woods with your finger on the trigger. You always wait till you got the object in your sight. So here's kind of a review question. How should each of the following tools be carried? Axes, prying tools, pike tools, striking tools, and power tools. It's a good rule of thumb, mainly with every tool, I guess. What do we talk about the first slide? Crickets. Point away from us. We always want to carry the tool with a point away from us. So if you're carrying that axe, make sure it's pointing away from you. It's a good one to know. So now we're gonna talk about cleaning and maintaining tools. You're gonna find this is really simple, and we're gonna bust right through it. Tools will function designed and properly maintained. So if you keep the axe sharp like it's supposed to, or sharpened to the right degree, and then keep them all clean of rust and handles checked over, make sure they're not cracked, they're gonna work, or basically should work all the time unless it's operator error. Tool failure can result in delays, injury, or death. Always follow the manufacturer guideline and SOPs. So can't use that axe until you look up the manufacturer's guideline. Damage or accessory worn tools should be removed from service, tagged, or sent for repair or replacement, or notify an officer, and they will take care of the tool. Fix it, replace it, do away with it, whatnot. So wood handle maintenance, how much stuff, how many tools these days are you seeing come out with wood handles? What's the next best thing in the world? Fiberglass composite handles. So anybody know like why everybody's switching these fiberglass composite handles?
They won't chip or splinter as bad as wood will.
They don't splinter, they don't dry rot, they don't chip. They're just, usually if they break and they're done. Whereas the wood handle can actually start to give way, and then, you know, you go to swing it the next time and it snaps in your hands. Whereas this is, if you swing it and it breaks, it's not gonna get any worse, it just broke. They're pretty easy to see if there's a problem with them. You can do a simple like flex test, just make sure it doesn't crack or anything like that. But this one here, I'm gonna talk about wooden handle maintenance. So it's pretty basic. You're gonna inspect for cracks and splinters. You're gonna wash, rinse, and dry, or wipe dry. So wash, rinse, and wipe dry is gonna apply to every tool we use. You don't wanna put the tool away dirty. Same goes for this, if there's sand if necessary. If you run your hand on this and feel a big burr, you can actually take a piece of sandpaper and sand that down, and so you're not snagging your hand on it. Check for tightness of head. How many people's picked up an axe or a hand, even a hammer, and wiggle the head and then just feel like it's gonna fly off? I know I have. So kinda check all this stuff over. If you have a wood handle, the proper way to treat it is with boiled linseed oil, which I have done once in my life. Then we bought one with composite handles. Maintaining tools with fiberglass handles. Wash it with mild detergent, then rinse and wipe dry. What's one thing you run into if you don't get it wiped dry and you throw it in a sealed up compartment and the thing's still wet? What's one thing you're gonna notice right off the bat, or the next day even? You ever put a wet log chain in the toolbox and come and get it the next time and it doesn't look nice and shiny again? What is it?
Starts to rust.
So rusty. So if we take the extra effort to wipe it dry or blow dry it, whatever we need to do, you could possibly prevent it from rusting out. They also make you could spray a light coat of oil on it. That does become messy, but if you're not gonna use it for a while and you just need to, like I said, wipe, even WD-40, just put a thin layer on it to keep it from rusting out. You don't wanna put a lot of motor oil because what's that stuff at a fire scene, you know, can potentially be flammable. Just check for damage and cracks, check the tightness of the head of the tool. I think they make wedges even driving the fiberglass ones to make them a little tighter. But before I recommend that, I would look up the manufacturer's recommendations. I think it says a brand on it. They should all have like a brand of some sort, so you can try to do a little research on them. The wood ones maybe not so much, unless it's an older one, might be stamped in it. I think this brand's China. Yeah, it's got something stamped on the head there. So, cutting edges to do right here, we say something about, I said the sharpness, and then I said like the degree of sharpness. One thing we preach is we don't want those things razor sharp. You don't want to be able to shave your face with them. They're somewhat dull actually. If you run your hand down it, which this one's a little sharper than it ought to be, I think.
Sharpen with a file.
So the reason we do that is, we'll talk about it. So when we're looking over the heads on the axes, and when I say axes, the cutting edges on every tool, we're gonna be looking for chips, cracks, and spurs. If we come across a chip, crack, or spur, how are we gonna sharpen that or fix the problem? I heard you say it.
With a file.
Yeah, we're gonna use a file. The bigger reason we're gonna use a file is because you're gonna do that slowly and it's not gonna get the head hot. Whereas if you take a grinder to it, you're getting that thing, you can actually, some of these might be tempered, and you get that thing hot, you could be changing I can't think of the word right now. Basically, you're gonna interfere with the properties of that steel. So, some stuff's not designed to be sharp and hot. Just kinda use your manufacturer recommendation, but you're gonna find everywhere you go, they're gonna say, don't sharpen this with a grinder, just take a file to it, which it doesn't. It sucks, but it's not that bad. It's kinda gives you a little fast time. You don't wanna make sure it's too thin or thick, so when they say too thin or thick, they're talking about the edge here. This one's just, like I said, maybe a little too thin. But, I can't can't cut myself with that unless I was swinging it at my hand or something. Another thing you notice on this is where the paint is. Does anybody know why we don't paint the tips? Peterson? Sure.
So it doesn't stick.
So, paint is known for, you swing that axe and you get in this wall, it can cause kind of a friction. So, if you don't have that paint on paint or the paint on the drywall, it creates less spots for it to stick. And it also keeps it edge free for inspection. You're not covering it up with paint. Make sure there's nothing cracked on the tip or anything. Oh, look at there. Looks like I knew what that was coming. See, Peterson's already read this.
A month ago. Still fresh.
Plated surfaces, plated with chrome and electroplating to protect metal surfaces. Those should probably end up in a trophy case and not be put on the fire truck. Is like this here, actually, we talked about that, plated. So this is actually plated probably with chrome. You see how shiny it is, where we'll go out there. And it's like the forge tool will have like a rough look to it, won't be so shiny. Here's kind of some, this goes for every tool out there, not just primarily plated surfaces. You need to wipe clean using mild detergent and water, warm soapy water. Rinse and wipe dry, inspect for damage. I try to inspect for damage before and after, so that way there might be something that catches you before you even, like, oh, this thing doesn't even need cleaned, it's thrown in the dumpster. Or you might clean it and be like, oh, I didn't see that big crack on the metal, so. Check them both, anytime before and after use. Mostly after. Because we just talked about use metal file to remove burrs. Do not make it too sharp. Use Emerkoth or steel wool to remove dirt and rust. So don't use your grinder, use your hands. And respect the tool. Unprotected metal surfaces. So it talks about oil surface lightly and avoid any protectant that contains chlorothane. So basically, very light oil, like WD-40 works pretty good. Do not apply oil to the striking surface. You know which one's the striking surface that they're referring to on this?
Blade, or the tip,
So they're actually called this the striking
Oh.
surface, yep.
hammer in.
So this would be your cutting surface. So, I mean, what's one thing, if you put oil on this, you go ahead it, you might,
Slide.
might slip.
Slippery and,
Said, we went over this already, inspect the metals for chips, cracks, burrs, and sharp edges, file them off. Why would we clean our tools and maintain them? There's a couple reasons.
they're gonna last longer.
Last longer,
Spot damage.
spot damage,
Till we beat the hell out of them.
beat the hell out of 'em. Pride. Like this one here is pretty beat up, it probably needs painted. Like, take a little bit of pride in your department and clean the tool off. You don't wanna be that guy that said, or you don't wanna be that next shift coming on and the other shift cheering you about like, hey, why'd you leave that axe covered in mud? Take some pride, make sure the tools get cleaned up, don't be lazy. But yeah, the biggest reason is to make sure they stay clean for the next use. I'm gonna grab a drink, everybody else wants to take one? Or,
How many slides you got?
we're gonna bust them out real quick.
So you need to pause your camera.